Hi, this is David Johnson with Cyber North, and this is another episode of I Get Asked This a Lot. Today, I'm going to be doing one of the portions of the Cohesity Hardening Guide Best Practices document. I'm going to be focusing on the section Secure Your User Account and Password and going through a few of the items in there. Some of the stuff is pretty easy. Um, for instance, there are some default user accounts like the admin account. Um, you have to set that password. There is no default password. You have to set it at the time of cluster deployment. Um, and then there are some others that also don't have a default password, like the support user. That's another one, and we'll go through how to set that. Um, then there's the IPMI interface, right? We don't want to use default passwords there. Um, I'm not going to be going through that in my video. Um, each individual deployment could be different depending on what hardware you're using. It could be the Cohesity C-Series hardware. It could be HPE hardware. And so I'm not going to go through that. Um, but let's start with setting some stuff up. So the first thing that we're going to go through is the account security or password policy. This is for the local cluster. It's under settings and account security, as you can see. And so this can be edited, and every different type of regulatory compliance has different recommendations. Um, there is a minimum here. I know there are quite a few out there that they want a minimum password length of 14 characters or 16 characters. I'm just going to go ahead and set this to 14, and then we'll do at least one uppercase, one lowercase, one number, and one special character. Um, Minimum character difference, sure, 5, and reuse difference, we'll set those. Minimum password reset duration, right? This is the minimum number of days before someone can reset the password. This, of course, is to prevent somebody from just resetting their password over and over and over again, so that they could then use the same password. So this is a good idea to set, right? I'm going to set this to 7, and then we'll set this password expiration. I'm actually going to bump it up to 90, right? Um, and lockout duration, inactivity time. So this is how many days of not logging into the cluster before the account gets locked out. Again, this is should be following the policies of your organization. I'm just going to leave it as the default. Failed login attempts of 3. Um, so we'll just we'll leave a lot of this stuff as defaults, but there is also session management. I'm in dark mode, so you can't really see it very well. Session management policy, maximum timeout, right? So this is if somebody's logged in and for some reason they are actually active and they never time out, these 30-minute timeout for the cluster UI, after 24 hours, they would need to log in again. And same with the CLI, right? And then here are your timeouts for the UI and the CLI. Again, I'm just going to leave them as default and hit save. But that's definitely something as an organization you want to review um, and make sure that you're following your own policies there. Um, so the next thing that we'll go through multi-factor authentication, and some other items that can be found in access management. Um, so this cluster that I'm working on, this is as close to um, you know, just deployed as possible. Active Directory is not set up, MFA is not set up. There's no additional accounts. There's really nothing. So there's a few things that we want to do. One thing is to enable multi-factor authentication. Another thing will be to set up the Linux support user. Now I've already set the password for this account, so I can't reset it to show you. But I haven't enabled multi-factor authentication yet. Let's go ahead and do that right now. We need to unlock it to make changes. I'm using a password manager, which I highly recommend that if your organization is not using a password manager, you should. We happen to use Dashlane. It works very well for us. I know that there are others out there, but I highly recommend using password manager. So let's go ahead and unlock this account. I could update the password here. This is how you would do that. And I'm going to turn on multi-factor authentication for this user. I'm going to use an authenticator app instead of using email. And I'll go ahead and click Save. And then this is immediately going to pop up, and this is where you would scan with your authenticator app. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, I've done that. And then, of course, we need to verify it, and it's complete. One of the things that I like about Dashlane is because the support user is a shared account, there can only be one of them, right? So it's a shared account, is we can share those credentials in the password manager with a group, including the 2FA code. So, all right, so the support user is done. Now, to set up MFA for everybody on the cluster, this is where you do that. You go to the secure login, and we turn on MFA. And so I haven't configured the email server. You can use email to set this up. Obviously, every single user account needs to have an email associated with it. If you do that, I'm going to be showing you how to use an authenticator app. And click Save and Enable. You can use both of these. And now MFA is enabled for the system. And of course, I only have an admin account on this. So MFA is turned on automatically for this user. And so now let's take a look at what that looks like for the user the next time they go to log in. So I'll log out, and now I'm going to log back in, and it's going to say, hey, now you need to set this up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we'll hit continue and put in that security code, and it verified successfully. So now we're all set. It is a good idea to set up some additional accounts on your cluster with different roles, whether those are local accounts or Active Directory accounts or SAML accounts, whatever they are. It's a good idea. So I will go through and set up some Active Directory users. But first, we need to join Active Directory. Now, the really nice thing about Cohesity in their newer code revs, you go back a couple of years and you couldn't do this, but now with Active Directory users, Cohesity can manage the MFA locally, and so even if you don't have MFA enabled for your Active Directory users, Cohesity will have its own. So it makes it very secure. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and join this Cohesity cluster to Active Directory. This is just like joining a PC. So super easy. Once you plug in the information here, if you want, you can go through and say, hey, we want to use these specific domain controllers. Cohesity can be joined with multiple machine accounts, which is really nice. We'll go into the reasons why it's really nice later. And if you are rejoining, you can toggle this and say, hey, basically take over this machine account. Again, there's reasons for that, which we'll go over later. And then Cohesity can also discover trusted domains if you have those in your environment. So okay, so now we're joined, and now we can add AD users, and we can add either users or groups. Of course, we want to add users so that we can turn on MFA for those users, right? So I'll go ahead and add my own Active Directory account to this and give myself a role. Instead of giving myself admin, I'm going to give myself a data security role. Data security roles are used for specific functions like legal hold and configuring data lock. So we'll get into that later, but you definitely want to set up a user as a data security role. So we'll go ahead and click add, and you can see MFA is enabled by default for this user. So let's again take a look at what this looks like. And we'll log out. And now, because it's joined to the domain, we can change the domain. And then I can authenticate. And same thing, we need to set up MFA for this user. Okay, and my code has been verified. So now I'm signed in with that AD user, and MFA is turned on. So that takes care of setting up Microsoft Active Directory, setting up MFA. I am going to have a completely separate video just for setting up SAML providers later on. At this point, I need to log out and log back in with my admin account so that I can continue doing that type of stuff. Okay. So the next thing to go over is roles and roles-based access control. So there are a bunch of default roles. Some customers may choose to create custom roles. I'm not going to go over that. This really, that's kind of getting down into the weeds a little bit. But know that you can set up custom roles. There are a lot of default. Uh, Most customers are able to just use these default roles, right? Um, and it's important to make sure that you're setting up these roles appropriately. Um, Now, the next part of that, right? We have the roles. Now we have access. We need to set that up. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new user. Um, I'm going to pick on Brian Stickney, um, and we're going to give him um, an operator role. And the next thing that we want to do is, hey, we want to restrict that access to specific objects. And as I'm going through this, I'm realizing that I haven't registered any objects yet on this cluster. So it's a little difficult to actually show this. But uh, this is where you can pick specific vCenters, physical servers, even VMs, and if let's say you have a VMware environment and you have VMs in a specific folder, and Brian was responsible for just the VMs that were in a specific folder, you could give him permission to be a backup operator and only be able to run backup and recovery jobs for the VMs that are in that folder. That's all he would have visibility to. This could be specific SQL databases as well. So I'll have to come back to that at some point and show that in more detail, but just know that this is how you would do that. So I'll go ahead and add Brian again. You can see, he's set up as with MFA. So, um, and this is, you can edit it and change his role. You can change his restricted access after the fact. So, um, roles-based access control is very important, and it's also very easy. Cohesity makes it very easy to set up. I'll talk about some of the other roles. There is a replication role. So if you have more than one Cohesity cluster and you're replicating protection group runs between the clusters, this is to set up the clusters to communicate with each other. You would want to use um, set up a local user that has that replication role. So that's important to do. And then the viewer role is really good for setting up accounts. Maybe there you have some accounts set up to be able to call APIs to run reports or gather data from the cluster. Um, Setting up an account like that with viewer permissions would be an appropriate thing to do. So that covers the section in the hardening guide of secure your user account and password. Hopefully this has been informative and beneficial for you. Until next time, thank you.